I'll say it's mainly three things. Rebelling, inspiration and boredom. So I think boredom, when I was a child, my mum and dad used to play golf. We'll give us over and they'd leave me at the golf ball. And I'd sit there and either read or a draw. So that's the boredom one. And then inspiration, I had a wonderful teacher called Mrs. Crichton at primary school. And we had a story competition and I won it. And she painstakingly, I think of it now, she had kids of her own, typed out by hand the story and got me to do the book cover. So that, I think that gave me a lot of confidence. That was really important to me. And then rebellion, I went to a convict boarding school and you had to do all your other homework before you were allowed to do art. So art was really looked down upon. So of course, all I wanted to do was art because I was bad type of time. So, well, I went to art college and then I got a normal job as a diplomat in the Foreign Office. So I always kept painting and doing things. And then when I had children, I thought I had this idea that I'd be sat in the field with them playing beside me while I painted fantastic scenes, which it wasn't like that at all because kids get up to all sorts of mischief and try and do that. So when I got a little bit older, I went to Portugal on holiday and I was looking after the children and I was actually sat in the sea, in the water on the beach. And normally I would have hidden away and sketched when I had the chance. But because I was on my own, I had to be able to run into the water at any point in case anyone drowned. I was painting there and then people kept seeing my paintings and they come up and they buy one, then they buy another. I didn't have my children in it. And then I sell another and I thought, oh, this is the life. Mm-hmm. This is like heaven. But then I had to go home till Easter and I was a bit fed up, if I'm honest. I was a bit depressed. And I thought, well, I haven't got beaches in Leicester. I have got history. So I went to paint Leicester Cathedral, which had loads of history. Richard III had just been found just a month before while I was in Portugal, but I didn't even walk over since the other end of the street to have a look. I was not interested in that at all. I just thought someone came. But then I kept painting historical places and I bumped into a lady called Philippa Langley who discovered Richard III, who was the last king to die in battle. And I listened to her talk and then I asked her, I heard that Richard III was behind my garden gate, that was the old London road from Leicester to Bosworth. And herself, another historian, looked on the map where my house was and went, well, that's correct. So from then on, I just kept learning about Richard III. I messaged Philippa, asked her silly questions because I didn't know anything. And eventually I had all these paintings. I grabbed my children, made them go to the north of England to paint various castles. And then I said to Philippa, will you open my art exhibition? And I happened to book the Guildhall in Leicester the week that he was reburied, which was weird. And she did. She was great. She opened my art exhibition for me and it was a huge success. This by thousands. I thought I'd hit the jackpot, but then, it's not as easy as that, even though we've got loads of press and stuff. You're still a working artist, still trying to sell your paintings. But from that moment on, I didn't drop everything else. I used to do photography, I dropped that and concentrated on the art. I explore life and death and the energy that surrounds that. I used to be a Green Party councillor. So, I fought for the environment. When I look at a scene I'm painting in particular, I always find out about the history. I love history. But I also am concerned for the future. So those elements come into a lot of my landscapes have water in it at the moment, which I feel like we have a lot of issues, especially in this country, but worldwide about water. So, and also the energy within water as well. So I'm concerned about that. If I do portrait painting, I like to find out everything I can about a subject. If I've not met them, I watch everything about them and get a hands-on and read everything to try and get a feeling for the person they are, because I want it to look like them, but more important to me is the atmosphere around them and how that feels. So I tried to convey that in the artwork. So this piece is called Bohemian Rhapsody. So you can probably guess it's a Queen, but I was inspired by my boyfriend at the time, now husband. Many years ago, he met Freddie Mercury just before he died. He was working as a portrait at Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, and he took a patient, lifted them out of bed, put them into their wheelchair, and was taken down to X-ray. And yes, said, I can't do this anymore. Can you please take me back to my bed? And my husband said, of course, took him back. Had quite a conversation with them. He just finished university. He was a student working in London. And then went back to the nurse's station. And his friend said, you do realise that's Freddie Mercury, because he was using his real name. And my husband didn't. That it was just such, for someone to be so ill and still be interested in other people, it just really touched me. So I didn't really mean to paint it like that, because it's quite ghostly, but I just couldn't get the image because my husband didn't recognize Freddie, and I just couldn't get that imagery out of my head. And it's, all about life and death and the impact we make in this world. So that's really where that came from. And I will grab any material that's near to me when I'm in that artistic zone. But what I do like is layering up. So sometimes the piece can be very quick. I can do very quick ink sketches. But when it comes to an art piece using oils, I can use oils, resin, spray paints. I use glass paint because I like to use the resin. At times I build it up so it's 3D. So something like that. Also, I like texture. When my mum was just say overnight in one eye, I was very aware of how things feel tactily. So, for example, sometimes the resin I will put sand into it and stuff, and I'll build it up and come out. So I am feeling that I'm getting more interested in textures and more sculptural qualities to my work. That's a difficult question, because I think everyone brings, when they see a piece of art, it's like you're communicating with the viewer, but they're also communicating with you because they bring their experience to your art piece. So with visual work, I feel that you put yourself into that art piece and you try and be as honest as you can to bring authenticity to it. And you hope your thoughts and feelings come over. But it's also very interesting to hear what people get from it, because sometimes they'll bring things into it from their experience. And so, for example, I had one piece being exhibited for a couple of weeks, and this lady came back day after day to see it, and I wouldn't go over it. I didn't want to. She was very quiet, sitting there, just looking at it. And I've actually spoke to somebody, and there was life and death in this piece, but it wasn't just about that, but she really got that it was. And she'd had somebody that she'd lost recently. So for her, it was somehow giving her something. I never wanted to ask her directly. It's people she knew spoke to me, because I felt like I was then kind of disturbing her. But to me, that meant the world, because that was obviously meaning something to her. And that's why I'm creative, is for people to get something out of what you're doing. It's all about feeling. So when I'm painting person, it's doing a background work. I think with everything, it's doing a background work, doing your research, finding out about them or finding out about the place. But then how does it make you feel? How do you react to that? And so often I'll start, if it's in person, I always start with a sketch. And sometimes I'll end up incorporating the sketch into a painting and building it up with oils on top, because the feeling you get, sometimes it's immediate and it works, and you just got to capture it. And if you're too considered, you can lose that. And think with a location, I prefer to paint on location. That would be my preferred. And then I would finish it in the studio, for example, to build it up with oils. But I think the feeling you get of being on location in that place, you know how that place feels, somehow comes through. And then ink sketches, which I love to do. I do those everywhere. It's very much just immediate, but I just love, I think it's taken me a while, but I've loved to embrace failure and mistakes, because sometimes when you think something's going wrong and you just want to stick it somewhere, rip it up, that's exactly when you've got to work through it, because something else comes out at the end of the day, and it could be something that you've not expected, not planned, and therefore it can work so much better. Again, it's all about research and trying to, but if it's commission, I really like to speak to the person that's commissioned me to find out why they want the painting done. Because I'm trying to bring their experience into painting, what they're about, why they want a certain thing done. And I feel that does influence how I paint it. Whether it's conscious or subconscious, of filtering all these experiences into a painting makes it different, rather than just not to start too quickly, but to absorb. And that makes a difference. Well, I think experimentation keeps it present. It keeps it interesting. I think my style was very impressionistic before. I love the Impressionist painters. I love the Pre-Raphaelite painters. But I think everything moves forward and everything changes. So I feel like surrealism is kind of edging its way into my work a bit. Just when there's some points I want to make, there's things that I will put in of kind of a little bit of Banksy kind of is edging its way in there. All these things that you see in other artists' work, I think kind of ferment within yourself, and then it becomes something unique to you because you learn from every experience. And I think at the moment, I know that I'm going through a change in what I'm doing. And I think before maybe I kind of resisted that a bit. But now it's like, well, that's why I do what I do, because it's creative. So you need to just fall into that. It takes a little bit of confidence thing, because you are putting yourself out there, and it can work or not work. Well, I hope they enjoy seeing the art, being honest about how they feel about it. People sometimes get a bit intimidated by art. I just think learning to trust your feelings with something, whatever they are, negative or positive. It's art is meant to be out there to communicate. That's what it is. It's a communication device to things sometimes that we can't put into words, to tap into our innermost feelings. So if anybody feels like that to me is the biggest reward. I feel like in some ways I started off as a bit traditionalist, that I did like life drawing, still like life drawing, but be able to draw, I think, is a good foundation for an artist. And I know that's not always fashionable these days. And then go off and do whatever it is that calls to you, and freedom is there for the taking. Like, so much stuff has been done, but also things are an ever evolving world. We just don't know where anything's going to go. So it's grabbing those opportunities and just relying on your gut. So I think that is really important. I think sometimes you hear people saying it could be a negative in the art world to think something's beautiful, and I just don't get that, because I don't know how that can be a negative. And I would like to be part of the contemporary art world and think it's not wrong for something to be beautiful, but just don't see one way. That makes it less appealing in any way. Well, I'm writing, I've written a children's rhyming book about challenges in life, a little boy with an invisible friend. So I've illustrated that as well. So I've just got to finish that off. So then I'll be marketing that. But also I'm working on a series of paintings about the wonder of water, because of course he used to be a Greek counsellor. One of my driving forces is the environment. So the fact that we have so many problems with our water companies drives me mad. But I think I can paint a beautiful scene and make it have a positive experience about how amazing water is, and try and push that subject matter. I have exhibited with Greenpeace before, which was on that matter. So I just going to try and draw as much attention as I can to that. I really have no idea. So, I used to be a very planned person. I find my plans don't tend to work. And so, I would like to, of course, get my work out there as much as possible and for it to be, I hope, a positive experience for people that might help with change. I think there's a lot of artists on that same page, but I think we live in a beautiful world and we need to protect that and protect the people in it. So I have no idea, but I just keep dreaming and I find visualization um, a very useful tool. And then something happens and I just trust in that process then.